Welcome to the History Stories podcast.
Great to be here.
We've got some absolutely epic history books and uncovered sources today because we are embarking on, well, a historic road trip across the Pacific.
That's a perfect way to put it. A liquid continent?
Exactly. And forget any ideas about, a few lucky accidents. We're diving deep into this multi-millennial saga of deliberate Polynesian voyaging.
It really is a saga. Thousands of years, thousands of islands.
Right. Our mission on this historic road trip is to figure out how, thousands of years ago, people with, well, what we'd call Stone Age tech, how they found and actually thrived on scattered islands like Hawaii, Rapa Nui, Aotearoa, across millions of square miles of ocean.
It just boggles the mind when you think about the scale and the technology gap compared to, say, European explorers much later.
Prepare to have your understanding of ancient human potential completely reset.
Absolutely. You mentioned the Polynesian Triangle, Hawaii, Rapa Nui, Aotearoa. That defines the corners, yeah. But picture it over 10 million square miles. More than 1,000 islands scattered within that. It's just vast.
How do you even begin to find those tiny specks, let alone settle them thousands of years ago?
That's the core question, isn't it? It's this incredible human achievement we're trying to understand.
Okay, let's chart the course then. Talk us through the timeline. Where does this story really kick off?
Well, the deep roots are with the Austronesian peoples. They came out of Taiwan, Southeast Asia, great seafaring cultures.
The foundation, basically.
Exactly. And starting around maybe 3000 down to 1500 BC, they're moving south and east, eventually reaching island Melanesia.
Which is already a pretty serious journey itself.
Oh, for sure. And that movement sets the stage for what we call the Lapita culture. They pop up in the Bismarck Archipelago, just north of New Guinea, around 1400, 1500 BC.
Lapita, okay, what's key about them?
Two big things. One, their pottery, really distinctive stamp designs. We can track their expansion by finding these shards.
Ah, the archaeological breadcrumbs.
Right. And two, they were clearly masters of early ocean travel. They were also adapting crops, paro, yams, breadfruit, learning how to make them work in these new island settings.
And genetics points to a pretty direct route for some of them.
Yeah, interestingly, some genetic evidence suggests maybe a more direct hop from places like the Philippines or even Taiwan, straight to areas like Vanuatu and Tonga, less mixing along the way initially.
Okay, so from the Bismarcks and Melanesia, they push further east.
Yep, into what we now call West Polynesia. Think Fiji, Tonga, Samoa. That happens between about 1100 and 900 BC.
And we have hard evidence there, too. Pottery.
We do. There are Lapita pottery shards found in Samoa, for instance, dating back to roughly 1000 BC.
But then things slow down. I've heard about this long pause.
Ah, yes, the long pause. It's really fascinating. For about 1,000 years after settling West Polynesia, the major eastward push seems to halt.
1,000 years. What are they doing? Just staying put.
Not exactly staying put, no. It was likely a period of intense consolidation and development. Populations were growing. They were adapting deeply to those specific islands.
Refining their techniques.
Absolutely. Perfecting their canoe technology, their navigation skills must have reached incredible levels of sophistication during this time. Complex social structures were likely developing too.
Kind of like a necessary incubation period. Maybe environmental pressures played a role too.
Could be. Resource management on islands is tricky. Maybe adapting to local conditions, building resilience, before launching out again into the unknown east.
And when they did launch out again, wow, that's the Great Wave into East Polynesia.
That's the one. Roughly 800 to 1200 CE, give or take, pushing into the Society Islands, the Marquesas.
And then the really remote ones, Hawaii, Rapa Nui.
Exactly. The dating for those furthest points is still debated. Some evidence might push Hawaii or Rapa Nui settlement even a bit earlier, but that general time frame holds.
And finally, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Right, settled by Maori ancestors journeying from East Polynesia, probably around 1250 to 1300 CE, and then even further to the Chatham Islands, Rokohu, a bit after that.
So this wasn't just one single fleet sailing off, more like pulses of exploration.
Definitely multiple waves, complex interactions, maybe even return voyages happening, connecting these places. It created this vast, interconnected network of related but distinct cultures.
And doing all this without compasses, sextants, metal tools.
Yeah.
It's just staggering.
It really is. It forces us to rethink our definitions of technology and exploration.
Let's paint a picture of the world they were navigating. Huge distances.
Immense. Empty ocean for weeks, potentially. And the islands themselves varied hugely high volcanic islands with rich soil, versus low coral atolls with very limited resources.
And you couldn't just land and find everything you needed. You had to bring your world with you.
Precisely. Transporting not just people, but a whole viable ecosystem. Plants, animals, the knowledge of how to cultivate them.
Right.
It's an incredible logistical feat.
Plus the navigation challenges. Weren't the winds mostly against them going east?
Yeah, the prevailing winds in much of the Pacific are the easterly trade winds. So for much of their eastward expansion into remote Oceania, they were essentially sailing against the wind or needing very specific conditions and strategies to make headway. It wasn't easy sailing.
Which makes the achievement even more remarkable. It really puts European exploration into perspective.
Absolutely. When someone like Captain Cook arrives in the 1770s, he's genuinely astonished.
What struck him the most?
He noted the isolation, especially somewhere like Hawaii in 1778, but also the clear connections he recognized, similarities in language between Hawaii and Tahiti, thousands of miles apart. He saw their seafaring skills firsthand.
And didn't he have a Polynesian navigator with him who was crucial?
Yes, Tupaya, a high-ranking navigator and priest from Raiatea. He joined Cook's first voyage and was invaluable. His geographical knowledge was just immense.
So he knew where islands were that Cook had no idea about.
Exactly. He could name and accurately locate dozens of islands.
Mm.
He even drew a type of chart for Cook, trying to represent his mental map within a European framework, and he understood the seasonal wind shifts, explaining how eastward voyaging was possible. He was Cook's Pacific GPS, basically.
Wow. But after Cook, the European view, it kind of soured, didn't it? The accidental drift theory started popping up.
Sadly, yes. There was a shift toward skepticism. A lot of it likely stems from Eurocentric bias, this idea that maybe these primitive islanders couldn't really have done this intentionally.
So easier to imagine them just getting blown off course.
Or exiled, yeah.
That's it.
It conveniently minimized their agency, their skill, their incredible knowledge systems. Plus, sometimes earlier Spanish discoveries were kept quiet, adding to the confusion.
And European contact itself, while giving us some records, it ultimately disrupted the voyaging tradition.
Devastatingly so. Diseases wiped out huge numbers of people. New technologies, colonial administration, missionaries, they all fundamentally changed island life.
So the long-distance voyages started to fade.
They largely ceased in many areas. And with that, the intricate knowledge began to erode, become fragmented. By the 20th century, it was almost lost in places like Hawaii.
Which means those European accounts, while useful, are incomplete, filtered.
Definitely filtered. They often miss the depth of understanding, the ecological literacy, the worldview behind the voyaging.
Okay, so let's crack the code. How did they navigate? What was in the toolkit, if not compasses and charts?
Their toolkit was the environment itself, read with incredible sophistication. It was science, art, memory, all rolled into one, passed down generation after generation.
Celestial navigation had to be key, right? The stars.
Absolutely central. They developed these mental star compasses. Imagine the horizon divided up.
Like points on a compass, but using stars.
Exactly. The Hawaiian system, for instance, used 32 houses or points on the horizon. Navigators memorized where specific stars would rise in the east Akina and set in the west Komohana.
Hundreds of stars.
Oh yeah, they knew their paths precisely. You'd steer by a rising star, then as it climbed higher, you'd switch to the next one rising in the correct house to maintain your heading through the night.
Were there specific go-to stars? Like a North Star equivalent?
They used lots, but certain prominent ones were key navigational markers. Huria, that's Arcturus, was hugely important. The Pleiades, the Southern Cross, Canopus, they all played roles, often helping determine latitude.
Latitude.
Yeah.
How did they manage that without instruments?
One technique was using zenith stars, stars that passed directly overhead at a specific latitude.
So if you sailed north or south until your island's zenith star passed directly overhead.
You knew you were on the right latitude line. Then you just had to sail east or west along that line. It's brilliant.
Okay, that covers the night. What about daytime?
The sun was the primary guide, obviously. Its rising and setting points, its path across the sky. The moon, too, when visible. They understood the sun's seasonal shifts along the horizon.
So always observing, always calculating. But it wasn't just looking up, was it? The ocean itself held clues.
Huge clues. They could read ocean swells like a book.
Swells, not just waves.
Right, the underlying long-period waves generated by distant storms, sometimes thousands of miles away. They travel in consistent directions. By feeling the canoe's motion, the pitch and roll, they could detect the direction of different swell patterns.
And tell if they were being pushed off course.
Exactly. Or detect how swells changed near land. Land blocks, reflects, and refracts swells, creating predictable interference patterns that signal an island is near, even before you see it. Calmer water in the lee of an island is another sign.
That's amazing. What about currents? Winds?
Deep knowledge of both. Knowing the major currents, like the equatorial countercurrent, was vital. And understanding prevailing winds and how to use them, even for sailing somewhat upwind, was part of the skill set.
Okay, sky, ocean. What about life? Birds, clouds?
Definitely. Their environmental observation skills were just incredibly sharp. Land-nesting seabirds were crucial.
Because they have to return to land at night.
Precisely. If you see certain birds flying purposefully at dusk, you follow them. They knew the flight ranges, like the white tern, Manuaku in Hawaii, usually stays within about 120 miles or so of land. Migratory bird paths could also offer directional clues.
Clouds too, how?
Clouds tend to form over islands, especially higher volcanic ones, because of the rise in warm air. They could spot these stationary cloud formations on the horizon.
And reflections.
Yeah, the underside of clouds can sometimes reflect the color of the land or lagoon beneath them, a subtle greenish tint for a lagoon, maybe.
Tiny details. Anything else? Watercolor? Debris?
All of the above. Subtle changes in watercolor might indicate shallows or runoff from land, floating debris like logs or seaweed, even specific types of fish that congregate near islands. And there's mention of something called tilapa.
Tilapa? What's that?
It's described, particularly from the Santa Cruz Islands area, as a kind of underwater bioluminescence, like streaks or flashes of light believed to point towards land. Its exact nature is still debated, but it seems to have been another tool in the kit.
Wow. So much information to process and remember. How did they manage it all? How was it taught?
Primarily through oral tradition and intense apprenticeship, constant observation from a young age, rigorous memorization.
Mental maps, basically.
Huge, complex mental maps, keeping a continuous mental log of the journey direction, distance traveled, drift, conditions. And this knowledge wasn't just technical. It was woven into their culture.
Chants, stories.
Yes, chants, songs, genealogies often encoded navigational information, star paths, island locations, powerful mnemonic devices. Teaching sometimes used physical aids too, stones or shells arranged to show star patterns, maybe using house rafters to represent celestial paths.
Like the Micronesian stick charts.
Exactly. Those are the most famous physical examples, showing swell patterns and island positions. While maybe not identical everywhere, the Hawaiian term kapehu might refer to similar conceptual maps or memory aids. It was truly embodied knowledge learned through senses, experience, constant practice.
And the vessels carrying them. The canoes, these were serious pieces of engineering.
Absolutely. Especially the large double-hulled voyaging canoe, the Walkula. That was the key.
Why double hulls?
Stability, first and foremost. Critical for ocean crossings. Plus, it gives you a wide, stable platform between the hulls for carrying cargo and people, keeping them drier and safer.
How are they built? Big single logs.
Often carved from huge single tree trunks, yeah, like the massive koa trees in Hawaii.
Yeah.
The hulls were typically U-shaped. Sometimes they were built up using carefully fitted planks, edge-joined and sewn together.
A link sewn together, wow.
Incredible craftsmanship. Then the two hulls were connected by strong crossbeams of kako. These supported the central platform, the pola.
And lashed together with?
Coconut fiber cordage in it, incredibly strong and resistant to salt water. They had sophisticated lashing techniques, often using internal wooden cleats or blocks called way for extra strength and flexibility in heavy seas. Waterproofing might use things like breadfruit sap. These could be big vessels 60 feet or even more.
How did they power and steer them?
Sails were key. Usually large triangular sails, often with that distinctive crab claw shape, which is surprisingly efficient. Woven from pandanus, leaves lahala.
Mass.
One or sometimes two masts. And steering wasn't with a rudder, but large, powerful steering paddles or sweeps, ho'uli. Took skill and strength to handle those.
So the canoe design and the navigation system really grew up together.
Completely intertwined. The vessel had to be capable of the voyages the navigation system allowed, and the navigation system relied on the vessel's performance characteristics.
Okay, you have the canoe, you know how to navigate, but you need supplies. For weeks, maybe months, and to start a new life.
Exactly. Stocking the ark was critical. Water was paramount, carried in gourds, bamboo sections. Coconuts were vital, too, for liquid and food. And collecting rainwater whenever possible.
Food.
Preserved staples were essential. Dried fish, fermented breadfruit paste poi, which lasts a long time, taro, also often as poi, yams, sweet potatoes, and fishing gear, of course, to catch food along the way.
And the live stuff, the canoe PPN.
The portable Polynesian pantry. Yeah, this is amazing foresight. They carried live pigs, dogs, chickens.
Wow. Live animals on a canoe for weeks.
Yep. plus carefully chosen plant cuttings and seeds. Taro, yam, breadfruit, coconut, sugarcane, bananas, also important plants like tea, kava for ceremonies, noni for medicine, kukui for oil, turmeric, ginger. The essentials for establishing Polynesian life in a new place.
Incredible planning.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to that debate. Drift versus deliberation. Seems pretty clear which way the evidence points now.
Overwhelmingly towards deliberate, skilled voyaging. Those early European accidental drift theories really underestimated them, often due to that Eurocentric bias we talked about.
Then came Thor Heyerdahl and Kon-Tiki. That caught the public imagination, didn't it?
Hugely. In 1947, he sailed a balsa raft from Peru to the Tuamotus to prove his theory that Polynesia was settled from South America, drifting west.
Based on things like stonework, legends, the sweet potato.
Right. And the voyage itself was remarkable. It showed a raft could drift that way.
But it didn't prove his main theory.
No. The scientific community largely rejected it. His ideas relied on flimsy comparisons, ignored the massive linguistic, archaeological, and later genetic evidence pointing west to Southeast Asia, and frankly, he just didn't give Polynesian sailors enough credit for their skills.
So the modern consensus is solid. Eastward expansion, skilled Austronesian voyagers.
Absolutely. And experimental archaeology, especially Hukulia, has been crucial in demonstrating that.
Hukulea's voyages proved you could sail these canoes using traditional methods exactly where you intended to go, even against the wind.
Precisely. Targeted long-distance voyages were entirely feasible.
The sweet potato, that's the lingering puzzle, right? It's native to the Americas.
It is. And it was definitely in Polynesia before Europeans arrived. We have archaeological evidence from the Cook Islands around 1000 CE.
So how did it get there? Did Polynesians make it all the way to South America?
That was always the most plausible hypothesis, countering Heyerdahl, that Polynesian explorers reached South America and brought it back. Natural dispersal seems unlikely for the sweet potato.
And now genetics weighs in.
Big time. Recent studies, particularly around 2014 and 2020, found clear evidence of native South American DNA mixed into some eastern Polynesian populations. Rapa Nui, Mangareva, Marquesas specifically.
Really? Where in South America?
The closest genetic match they found was to the indigenous Sinu people of modern-day Colombia. And they could even date the admixture event.
When?
Pretty tightly dated to between 1150 and 1230 CE, right in that period of major eastward expansion and settlement.
Wow. So Polynesians likely did reach South America.
It looks that way. They probably made contact, interacted, and brought back not only the sweet potato. The word kumara is similar in Polynesian and Quechua languages too, but also a distinct genetic signature.
Proof of two-way voyaging, potentially. Or at least a return trip.
It strongly suggests it. It just adds another layer to their incredible accomplishments.
Which leads perfectly into the modern story, the rediscovery, the Renaissance, Hukulia.
Yes, after centuries where the knowledge faded, especially post-contact.
It was almost lost in places.
Almost completely lost in Hawaii, for example. By the mid-20th century, it really only survived intact in a few places, mainly in Micronesia.
But then came the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 70s.
Right, a surge of cultural pride and revitalization. And out of that came the Polynesian Voyaging Society in 1973, founded by people like Ben Finney, Herb Kwanui Khan, Tommy Holmes.
And their goal was?
To build a performance-accurate replica of a traditional voyaging canoe and sail it using only traditional methods to prove it could be done, to reclaim that heritage.
And that canoe was Hukulia.
Launched in 1975. A 62-foot wā kalua. Modern materials for safety, but traditional design and principles.
But they needed a navigator who still held the knowledge.
Critically, and they found Mau Pialbuk.
From Satawal in Micronesia?
Yes, a master navigator from one of the last places where the tradition was unbroken. He bravely agreed to guide Hukulia on its first major voyage, Hawaii to Tahiti, 1976.
Using only stars, swells, birds, no instruments.
None at all. And he did it. The arrival on Tahiti was this massive emotional celebration. It proved the ancestors could have done it. It was a lightning rod for cultural pride.
A turning point.
Absolutely monumental. And Mau didn't just do the voyage, he started teaching.
Passing the knowledge back to Hawaiians, like Nainoa Thompson?
Exactly. Nainoa became his devoted student, learned Mau's system, and integrated it with his own research, developing the Hawaiian Star Compass as a teaching tool.
And Nainoa made the trip himself.
In 1980, Nainoa navigated Hukulia to Tahiti and back using only traditional methods. The first native Hawaiian to do so in centuries. A huge moment.
And Hukla has kept sailing ever since.
Oh, yes. Numerous voyages, the voyage of rediscovery across Polynesia in the 80s, trips to Rapa Nui, the Malamahanwa worldwide voyage from 2014 to 2017 circumnavigating the globe.
Incredible. And other canoes joined the fleet.
Yes, sister canoes like Kwailoa, built with more traditional materials, Hikianalia, Alangano Maisu, gifted to Mao. A whole family, Ohanawa, has grown across the Pacific, reviving voyaging traditions.
The impact goes way beyond just proving history, doesn't it?
Immensely. It's fueled the revival of language, dance, ceremony, identity. Wayfinding training programs are thriving. Mao even performed the Sacred Poo ceremony in 2007, initiating Hawaiian navigators, passing on that lineage.
And the values resonate today. Observation, sustainability.
Malamahanwa, caring for the earth. These are core voyaging principles, and they speak directly to the challenges we face globally now. It's living heritage with modern relevance.
And it even popped up in pop culture with Disney's Moana.
It did. Moana brought wayfinding to a huge audience. They had Pacific Islander advisors.
Tried to get it right.
They did consult widely. It depicted wayfinding, canoe tech, the long pause, mythology, generally praised for representation, though some critiques about maybe homogenizing diverse cultures or appropriation exist, but it definitely raised awareness.
Okay, before we wrap up our road trip, let's dig into a few deep cuts. Hidden gems, named navigators, maybe.
Well, you have the foundational figures, often blending myth and history, Maui the trickster, Kupe the explorer, credited with discovering Aotearoa, Hawaiialoa in Hawaiian tradition. Their stories often contain real navigational clues. Genealogies trace lines back to canoe captains.
Then historical figures like Tupia.
Absolutely. And in the modern revival, Mau Pialug is legendary, the teacher who shared the knowledge. And Nainoa Thompson, the student who learned, adapted, and now leads.
What about archaeological treasures, specific canoes found?
Some amazing finds. The Anawika canoe, found in Aotearoa, dates to about 1400 CE, shows composite construction, repairs, even a sea turtle carving linking back to tropical Polynesia.
And that very recent find in the Chatham Islands.
Just unearthed in 2024, hundreds of preserved wooden pieces of a waka, plank-built construction. They even found possible sail fragments, cordage, timber linked to mainland New Zealand trees. It's incredibly exciting, promises so many insights.
Specific knowledge bits, tilapa, bird ranges.
Exactly. Telapa, that underwater life phenomenon. The detailed knowledge of bird flight ranges, like the Manuoku. Efforts now to document all the Hawaiian star names not in Noahuku, the Micronesian stick charts as teaching tools.
And the genetics confirming that South American link.
Right, specifically linking East Polynesians to the Xenu region of Colombia around 1200 CE. It all paints this incredibly rich, detailed picture.
And it highlights the diversity too, right? It wasn't all one identical system.
Not at all. Micronesian stick charts are unique. Moriori culture on the Chathams adapted differently. The fact that Hawaiians needed Mao's Micronesian knowledge shows how specific traditions could become. Polynesian is a huge family of distinct cultures, all shaped by the ocean and voyaging.
It really is an awe-inspiring story. Human ingenuity, resilience, exploration, driven by curiosity and this profound connection to the natural world.
From reading the stars and swells to carrying entire ecosystems in canoes, their achievements just fundamentally challenge our assumptions about the past.
And the revival, Hukalia and the Ohanawa, it's not just history, it's living culture, isn't it? A testament to that enduring bond between people and the ocean.
It really is. It keeps that connection alive and relevant.
And maybe makes us think about our own connection, or lack thereof, to the natural world. What can we learn from that deep ecological literacy, that ability to read the environment and live in harmony with it?
That's a powerful question for today.
We definitely encourage everyone listening to chart their own course, dig into the history books and sources, explore this further. It's an endless horizon. And it makes you wonder, what other incredible stories of human exploration are still out there, waiting to be fully understood?